This call is now being recorded.
Hello, sir. Can you hear me? Hello, Mohan Krishna, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay, we will start the session now, sir. I will just give a brief introduction and then I will hand over the session, sir.
Sure, sir. Please go ahead.
So, hello, participants. Good afternoon. Now, we are on the day 2 of Revolution and Advances in E-Vehicle FDP. And now we are going for session 5 that is on dynamics of electric and hybrid vehicles. And it will be presented by Dr. Mohan Krishna S., Assistant Professor, Department of Electrical Engineering, College of Engineering and Design, Alliance University, Bangalore. I want to give just a brief introduction about Mohan Krishna, sir. Dr. Mohan Krishna S. is currently working at Alliance University, Bangalore, India. He was awarded PhD in Electrical Engineering, Sensorless Control of Induction Motor Drivers for EV applications from Vellore Institute of Technology, VIT, Institute of Eminence, India, in March 2017. He received BTech and MTech degrees in Electrical Engineering from Amrita Vishwa Vidyapeetham, Institute of Eminence, Coimbatore, India in 2009 and 2012 respectively. He also acquired a domain-specific MBA, Power Management, from University of Petroleum and Energy Studies, UPES, Dehradun, India in 2019. His research interests include electric vehicles, smart homes, and IoT-based building energy management systems, state observer for induction motors, energy economics and sustainability, etc. He has many research publications in Sci-E and the Scopus indexed journals, book chapters, and also in conference proceeding to his credit. He is Energy Section Advisory Board member of Helion. He also serves as the Associate Editor of International Journal of Smart Vehicles and Smart Transportation, IJSVST, IGI Global US. Additionally, he is a member of the Editorial Review Board of International Journal of Energy Optimization and Engineering, IGEOE, Web of Science, ESCI. He is also editing several books in the domain of electrical vehicle, smart grids, and energy sustainability. He also serves as a reviewer for IEEE Access, IET Control Theory, IET Electric Power Applications, Compel, Turkish Journal of Electrical Engineering and Computer Sciences, all SCI, and several other Scopus indexed journals. He is a life member of several professional societies like the Institution of Engineers India, ISTE, IAENG, Enfuse, and a member of IEEE. He is also a mentor for the first and second editions of flagship IEEE Mentor for You program organized by IEEE Young Professional Affinity Group, Bangalore. So I give a warm welcome to Mohan Krishna sir for our FDP for being a resource person here. So we really thank to Mohan Krishna sir for accepting our invitation and to be here to deliver a lecture in our FDP. Once again, I welcome Mohan Krishna sir personally and on behalf of our institution and on behalf of our participants to this FDP. So now the session will be yours, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Am I audible and visible to everyone?
Yes, sir. You are audible.
Yeah.
Voice will be little bit more, sir. I hope.
Okay.
It is very less. Now it is very less.
Is it fine now, sir? Is it fine now?
Okay, sir. No problem. Thank you.
Okay. First and foremost, a very good afternoon to one and all. Let me take this opportunity to thank the organizers of this event, the Government Polytechnic at Harapanhalli, Karnataka, as well as Professor Dhruva Kumar for taking all the pains and efforts in making this event a success. I also thank them, the management of GPT Harapanhalli, as well as Professor Dhruva Kumar for giving me a platform and opportunity to share my knowledge. I feel privileged that the audience also comprise of enthusiastic engineering students as well as esteemed faculty members from different polytechnics and engineering colleges across the length and span of our country. I would make a very humble effort to dwell on the concept of the dynamics of hybrid and electric vehicles. And I've taken care to ensure that maximum information is packed in this 90 minutes of timestamp which has been given to me. I would welcome feedback, suggestions for improvement, as well as questions at the end of my PPT. Let me upload my slides. I'll be sharing my screen. Please let me know when my screen is visible to all of you.
Yes, sir, it's visible, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. So to start with the dynamics of electric and hybrid vehicles, so I'll set the brief context before going into the presentation. So why do we need to study the dynamics of electric and hybrid vehicles? Now, for any motorized vehicle, whether it is an automobile or a ship or a aircraft or a tram, dynamics is the study and analysis of vehicle in motion. So we need to be aware as to what are the externalities which affect the movement of the vehicle. Now, these externalities can be driver inputs, the propulsion system output, the resistance offered by the air or the resistance offered by the tire, the ambient conditions, the surface, water and air conditions. There are so many factors which come into play when a vehicle is in movement. So to start with, the prerequisite of electric vehicle dynamics is the Newton's 3 laws of motion. As you all are aware, I don't need to elaborate on these 3 laws. I think all of you would be aware of this. So any vehicle can either be in standstill or in motion. And due to a large number of rotating as well as static components inside a vehicle, there will be a huge amount of inertia involved. So therefore, there needs to be an external agent which tries to change the state of the vehicle from either uniform motion to a state of rest or vice versa. So whenever the state of vehicle changes or whenever the vehicle is set into motion, there are some forces which oppose the movement of the vehicle. Therefore, we have to overcome such opposing forces. So I think in essence, we need to understand Newton's 3 laws, the law of inertia or the first law, then the law of momentum or the second law, and the third law, which states that for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. So for every force which we exert, or for every force which the propulsion unit of the vehicle exerts on the ground, there is an equal and opposite force exerted by the ground or by the friction of the rotating parts of the vehicle itself, which tries to oppose the movement of the vehicle. So therefore, Newton's 3 laws must be taken in essence to understand the dynamics of electric vehicle. I don't need to elaborate on the 3 laws. I think all of you would be aware of it. So why do we go for electric vehicle? Why do we go to analyze the dynamics of electric vehicle? As you all are aware, let us understand the background before going into the going in detail regarding the dynamics of the electric vehicle. So first and foremost, as per the Newton's law of momentum, the acceleration of any object is proportional to the net force exerted. So if the net force is 0, then the object doesn't accelerate. So there are several forces which act on a vehicle. So to give you a brief overview, although we will deal with this in detail, to give you a brief overview, as and when the vehicle is moving, there is resistance offered by the wind. There is resistance offered by the tires of the vehicle. There is resistance offered by the road. There is resistance offered by the rotating parts within the vehicle itself. So we have to consider the effect of rolling resistance forces, the drag forces, as well as the friction when we are moving or when our vehicle is moving, and the resultant force which needs to be exerted by the propulsion unit of the vehicle must overcome all these forces which act on our vehicle. So therefore, which subsystem of the electric vehicle is responsible for providing the tractive effort to overcome all these forces which act on the vehicle is what we are interested in. So before going into that particular subsystem, I think briefly when we discuss about the three different subsystems of an electric and hybrid vehicle, all of you would be aware, we have the energy source subsystem comprising of your energy source like batteries, fuel cells, ultra capacitors, petrol tank in case if it's a hybrid vehicle. Then we have an electric propulsion subsystem comprising of our power modulator, the machines which act as a prime mover, and the transmission components like gears, differentials, axles. And then we also have the auxiliary subsystem. To give you greater clarity, you can see the different subsystems here. Right? The energy source subsystem not only comprises of the battery pack, it also has the battery management system for condition monitoring of the battery. So battery or the energy source subsystem comprises of the battery pack, the protection and isolation circuits, the battery management system, and the refueling unit. Here we are considering battery as the energy source. So the energy source subsystem is responsible for providing power to both the electric propulsion subsystem as well as the auxiliary subsystem. See, the auxiliary subsystem comprises of your starting, lighting, ignition, power steering, power windows. Now even our outside rear view mirrors, ORVMs, are operated electrically. Then we have our spoilers, sensors, infotainment system inside our vehicle. The power requirements of all these are taken care of by the energy source subsystem, apart from that of the electric propulsion subsystem. The propulsion subsystem comprising of our motor drive in the sense the power modulator, motor and its associated control mechanism. The propulsion subsystem is responsible for providing tractive effort or transmitting power to the wheels on the ground to overcome all those forces which act on the vehicle. I think I've given you a brief overview of the different subsystems of an electric vehicle and what role does the propulsion subsystem play. The main role is in the deliverance of your tractive effort. So I think I have already explained this point. Both internal as well as external forces act on a vehicle in motion, and the propulsion system delivers the thrust for propelling the vehicle in forward direction, at the same time overcoming all these resisting forces. So wherever I have taken information from, I have taken care to include the source. So I have referred some NPTEL courses. I have also referred some research papers. And at the end, I have also shared some additional information through web links, which would be very useful to the audience in understanding the dynamics of electric and hybrid vehicles. So to summarize whatever we have discussed so far at the peripheral level, the acceleration or the forward movement of the vehicle depends on these four factors. The power or the tractive effort delivered by the propulsion unit, the road conditions. We'll dwell on this in detail in the forthcoming slides. Sometimes the road can be an asphalted road, it can be a kacha road, it can be a road of RCC, reinforced cement concrete. Sometimes the road can be wet, the road can be dry. Once again, it does affect the movement of the vehicle. The aerodynamics of the vehicle, the effect of air on the movement of the vehicle, both at the front side of the vehicle as well as at the rear of the vehicle. Finally, the composite mass of the vehicle, very important is, excuse me, sir. Sorry, is anybody asking any question, please? Dhruva Kumar, sir, can I proceed?
Sir, please proceed, sir. Please proceed.
Thank you. Then the composite mass of the vehicle, the weight of the vehicle itself contradicts the movement of the vehicle in a forward direction, whether it is going on a level track or it is going on an inclined track. So, tractive effort. What is traction? Before going into tractive effort, what exactly is traction? Traction is the forward movement of a vehicle. When you try to propel an object in the forward direction. It has also got to do with how much is the grip of the vehicle on the road surface. So when you are using electricity to propel the vehicle or to provide traction, it becomes electric traction. So tractive effort is the effort required to propel a vehicle in the forward direction. And this is delivered by the vehicle propulsion system. And this is generally transmitted to the ground through the driving axle and the wheels. That is through the transmission subsystem of the vehicle. Or to be more clear, it is the force which is applied between the tire and the road surface. Therefore, to all my esteemed audience out there, the road surface as well as the tire, apart from the aerodynamics of the vehicle and the components inside the vehicle, the road surface and the tire play a major role in the dynamics of the electric and hybrid vehicle. And since we are talking about electric vehicles, the entire tractive effort has to be delivered by an electrical propulsion system. Here our full electric vehicle is purely powered by battery. We are not making use of any petrol engine or diesel engine or any internal combustion engine for giving the propulsion to the vehicle. We are purely dependent on a battery. So to give you more clarity, we can see the vehicle, the forward movement of the vehicle is provided by the tractive effort. Then the forces offered by the tire, the resistance offered by the tire, the resistance offered by the road, the resistance due to the internal rotating components inside the vehicle, the resistance offered by the wind, all these things try to oppose the movement of the vehicle, right? We also have some lift forces as well as the weight of the vehicle, which tries to impact the movement of the electric vehicle in the forward direction. Some more clarity. Here you can see the tractive effort is delivered to the rear wheel of the electric vehicle by means of the propulsion system comprising of your engine, the gear, differential. So the tractive effort is in the forward direction, but as per Newton's third law, there is always opposing torque or force which tries to oppose the movement of the vehicle offered by the road as well as the tire itself. So the maximum possible traction, very important, is how much traction or how much tractive effort can be delivered by the propulsion unit and what are the factors on which it depends. The composite mass of the vehicle or the weight of the vehicle and the adhesion coefficient. So adhesion coefficient I have already mentioned in the second line. It is the measure of the tendency of the wheels to slip. To put it in simple words, how much is the wheel able to have a grip on the road surface? That measure is given by the adhesion coefficient. So larger the size of the vehicle, larger the composite mass of the vehicle, more the adhesion coefficient, then more amount of tractive effort needs to be delivered to the wheels without causing them to slip between the tires and the road. So that was a brief description on the, that was a brief explanation on the background. Why exactly do we need to study and analyze the dynamics of an electric and hybrid vehicle? So prerequisites are the Newton's 3 laws of motion. And by now, I think all of you would also be aware of the role the tire of the vehicle as well as the surface of the road which plays. So now let me straight away go into the diagram. So I would seek your, I would excuse myself, whatever I have drawn, it is not to scale. So kindly excuse me, I have tried my best to depict it. So we have a vehicle here which is moving at an angle theta inclined to the surface. As you all are aware, it is moving at a velocity v having a mass m. So the tractive effort represented by FTE is in the forward direction. This is delivered by the propulsion unit of the vehicle. Then you have the force due to linear acceleration as well as angular acceleration. The force required to spin the rotating parts of the vehicle and the force required to propel the vehicle in the linear direction, also represented by forward arrows. Then you have the aerodynamic drag, which we will look into in detail. The resistance offered to the movement of the vehicle by wind, which is in the reverse direction. The weight of the vehicle or the gradient force once again tries to oppose the movement of the vehicle represented by Fg. Then you have the rolling resistance force, which is the resistance offered by the road surface as well as the resistance offered by the tire of the vehicle, which is again acting in the reverse direction. So therefore, by now I think the diagram is clear. This is the general description of a vehicle movement. So the typical electric tractive effort, as you had seen in the diagram, should overcome the rolling resistance, which is the resistance offered by the tire as well as the road. It should also overcome the aerodynamic drag. And the aerodynamic drag is all the more prominent, and the gradient force also is all the more prominent when the vehicle is moving uphill or downhill as compared to a flat track. So the nature of the track in which your vehicle is locomoting or commuting also matters a lot, whether it's a level track or it's an inclined track, or if you're going uphill or downhill or in a flyover and so on and so forth. So the gradient force opposes the motion, so that also has to be overcome. And the vehicle needs to be accelerated in the forward direction. So therefore, the tractive effort needs to overcome all these forces as well as the support, as well as it has to support linear acceleration as well as angular acceleration. I think it is very clear from the diagram in the general description of vehicle movement that the horizontal component of the gradient force Fg equal to mg into sine theta. So weight of the vehicle, the horizontal component considering the weight of the vehicle is given by mg sine theta. Aerodynamic drag forces as well as the rolling resistance force we'll discuss in detail, and we'll try to get an expression out of it. And the acceleration due to change in vehicle speed given by m into a or m into dv by dt, known as the force due to linear acceleration. This will also be discussed in detail. So all in all, the force, the tractive effort or FTE has to overcome all these forces. Force due to gradient, force due to rolling resistance, force due to aerodynamic drag, as well as the acceleration, linear acceleration, as well as the angular acceleration. So before getting in detail to the different forces which act on a vehicle, we need to understand some basic power, energy, and speed relationships. Once again, it is just we are revisiting our +1 and +2 physics. But thumb rule is, if you are going into a showroom and trying to purchase an electric vehicle, depending upon the driver profile, if you want a particular driving range, then you must focus on the energy. And if you want a particular acceleration, then you must focus on power. So this is the thumb rule for any electric vehicle, to be more specific, in an electric and hybrid vehicle. So energy gives the driving range and power gives the acceleration. So basic power, energy, and speed relationships must be known. So I think I don't need to do explanation here. Power is given by force into speed, or force into F into V or F into F by T. And energy is given by this expression. So the distance traveled can be estimated for a known energy input at a constant velocity with a power rating of P. So we have S equal to E into V by P. So that was about our basic power, energy, speed, and time relationship. Now let us look at each force in detail, which tries to
Sorry, sir, it was disturbance from our participant.
no problem, sir. No.
Professor Archana, madam, could you please now mute yourself?
Yes, muted, sir, muted.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can I proceed, sir?
Yes, sir.
So now coming to the different forces which try to oppose the movement of the vehicle, let us look at each one of them in detail, and let us try to analyze the effect of these forces on the movement of the vehicle, on the speed torque dynamics of the vehicle. So the aerodynamic drag is the force which the vehicle body encounters when it is moving at a certain speed through the air. Once again, the level of track in which the vehicle is commuting or locomoting also matters. If it's a level track, the aerodynamic drag forces are different. If it is uphill or downhill, the aerodynamic drag forces are different. If it is on a flyover or on a grade separator, the aerodynamic drag forces are different. Then the aerodynamic drag forces also vary with respect to the shape of the vehicle. So if you have outside rear view mirrors, you have halogen lamps, you have bumpers which protrude from the vehicle, even they also try to have an effect on the aerodynamic drag force which is acting on the vehicle. So for different shape of a vehicle, we'll come to know what is the value of the aerodynamic drag coefficient. So the drag forces are of two types. They can be classified as shape drag, and the second one is known as skin friction. So the first one has got to do with the shape of the vehicle, the different protrusions on the vehicle like bumpers, halogen lamps, headlights, spoilers, outside rear view mirrors, ORVMs. And the second one, known as skin friction, has got more to do with respect to the air molecules hitting the vehicle when it is moving on the road. So first, again, please excuse me, my diagram, I've tried my best, but it is not to scale. So I've tried my best to make it simple. So here our vehicle is moving at a velocity V. You can see air molecules are hitting the frontal area of the vehicle as well as the rear of the vehicle. Most of the air molecules hit at the front side of the vehicle, and some of them escape to the rear. Due to this, there is a pressure difference which is created at the front as well as the rear end of the vehicle. We have a high pressure area created at the front end of the vehicle, and we have a low pressure area created at the rear side of the vehicle. So now, due to this pressure difference, high pressure area tries to aid the movement of the vehicle, whereas low pressure area tries to oppose the movement of the vehicle. So this is the phenomenon of aerodynamic drag forces, which are primarily formed due to the pressure difference at the front and the rear of the vehicle when it is moving at a particular speed on a track. Once again, here I have given a level track. It can either be uphill or it can be downhill. Here again, the shape of the vehicle is of a particular shape. Sometimes it can be an open convertible vehicle, or it can be a completely closed vehicle, or it can be a van. So therefore, the aerodynamic drag forces vary with respect to the type of vehicle, the shape of vehicle, as well as the nature of the track in which the vehicle is commuting. So shape drag. So this is the concept of shape drag. As I had already explained, a high pressure area would be created at the front end. A low pressure area would be created at the back end. So this pressure difference would create a drag known as the shape drag. So the low pressure area tries to oppose or resist the movement of the vehicle. High pressure area tries to push or aid the movement of the vehicle in the forward direction. So coming to skin friction, this has got more to do with the air molecules which is touching the vehicle body, which is hitting the vehicle body. So the air molecules which are near the vicinity of the vehicle move at the same speed of the vehicle as compared to the air molecules which are slightly farther away from the vehicle. Once again, due to this relative speed difference, there is friction due to these two speeds, and this again opposes the movement of the vehicle. So this is known as the skin friction. So if the air molecules are in close proximity to the skin of the vehicle, the speed of air molecules is different as compared to those air molecules which are at a considerable distance from the skin of the vehicle. So as a consequence, based on whatever we have discussed so far, the aerodynamic drag force is a function of the frontal area of the vehicle. As I had already explained, the shape and the different protrusions, your outside rear view mirrors, the air ducts, spoilers, passages, halogen lamps, headlights, all these create drag forces. All these have an effect on the drag forces. The density of air also matters. If the air density is high, the pressure due to air also would be high. The velocity of the vehicle as well as the velocity of air. These are the main factors which affect the aerodynamic drag of the vehicle. Apart from this, the size and shape of the vehicle. So the aerodynamic drag component will be different for a car, it will be different for a bike, it will be different for a commercial three-wheeler, it will be different for a truck, it will be different for an electric bus. Then also in the track in which the vehicle is locomoting, once again level track, elevation, slope, all these are the other auxiliary factors which affect the aerodynamic drag force. So we have the frontal area, the air density, the velocity of the vehicle as well as the velocity of air. If the velocity of air is high as compared to that of the vehicle, then the drag would be higher. In some cases, the air velocity would support the vehicle speed. Once again, it depends on the direction in which the wind is flowing. That will again have an impact on the aerodynamic drag force. I'm not doing any derivation as such, but based on our understanding that the aerodynamic drag force is a function of the frontal area of the vehicle, the air density of the vehicle, the velocity of the vehicle as well as the velocity of air, we can get this expression. In terms of an equation, we get the expression for the aerodynamic drag force as half rho CD into A to V plus V air the whole square. So rho is the density of air, kg meter cube. CD is the aerodynamic drag coefficient. This is what is the most important parameter which depends on the design parameters of the vehicle. This is known as the aerodynamic drag coefficient, CD. V is the forward velocity of the vehicle, meters per second, and V air is the opposing velocity of air in meters per second. And A is the frontal area of the vehicle in meters square. As I had already explained before, it all depends on the direction of wind also. If air velocity is supporting the forward velocity, if it is going alongside the vehicle, it will be negative and it will be positive for opposing air velocity. To give some more clarity, we discussed the concept of aerodynamic drag coefficient, which depends on the design parameters of the vehicle. So as you all can see, for an open convertible type vehicle, we have a the aerodynamic drag coefficient ranging between 0.5 to 0.7. For a van, we have the aerodynamic drag coefficient ranging from 0.5 to 0.7. So generally, in India, we have either our vehicles are of ponton body or wedge-shaped body. We don't have open convertible vehicles. Of course, we do have, but they are very less in number. So generally, Indian road conditions or Indian conditions for that matter, we can consider our aerodynamic drag to be somewhere lying in the range between 0.3 to 0.6. Once again, this is only for four-wheelers, cars. It varies for trucks, it varies for buses, it varies for bicycle, it varies for bikes. It also varies for commercial three-wheelers. So to give you more clarity as to the value of drag coefficient for different vehicle types, I think this particular slide would be useful to aid your understanding. Once again, here you can see on the right side you have an Opel convertible type vehicle. Windows are open, roof is also open. The aerodynamic drag coefficient is changing from 0.35 to 0.45 as compared to a vehicle with windows as well as a closed. So that was about aerodynamic drag forces. Now coming into rolling resistance. To be more clear, all frictional load forces, whether it is internal or external. So we have to consider the rotating parts or rotating components inside the vehicle itself. We have the motor, we have the transmission components comprising of our gears, differential, axles, bearings, friction within the drivetrain. There's a difference between drivetrain and powertrain. Drivetrain is that system of a vehicle which delivers power to the wheels. Powertrain comprises of drivetrain plus the engine or the motor. So fundamental difference between a vehicle powertrain and a vehicle drivetrain is a vehicle drivetrain does not comprise of the motor or the engine, whereas your vehicle powertrain comprises the motor or engine plus the drivetrain. So friction offered by the rotating components within the vehicle, as well as the friction offered by the deformation of the tire on the surface of the road. Here, two forces are at play, the friction offered by the tire as well as the friction offered by the road surface. So together, all these forces can be clubbed as frictional load forces, which are both internal as well as external. So rolling resistance force is once again a function of the weight of the vehicle. Once again, to be more clear, it is different for a bicycle, for different segments of vehicle. For a two-wheeler, it is different. For a three-wheeler, it is different. For a non-premium four-wheeler, it's different. For a premium four-wheeler, it is different. For truck, for buses, they are different. So fundamentally, we need to understand that our vehicles are of different segments. And even when we take a particular segment, if we take a car, even in that we have different segments. As you all are aware, we have hatchback, we have sedan, we have light utility vehicle, we have multi-utility vehicle, we have sports utility vehicle, we have roadsters. Once again, even within a particular vehicle segment, these forces will vary because the size, shape of the vehicles are changing. The propulsion system ratings will change. The power ratings will change. The wheel base will change. The way in which the tire is constructed, whether it's a radial construction or any other type of construction, that also will matter. So it is there are so many forces coming to play, but I am trying to address everything under one roof. So the rolling resistance force is a function of the weight of the vehicle, the tire material or structure, as well as the tire pressure. So we have to be very careful with respect to tire pressure. Sometimes most of us don't monitor the tire pressure at all. We don't take it seriously, but it does have a serious effect on the tractive effort of the vehicle. And if it has an effect on the tractive effort, it naturally it will be having an effect on the speed and range of the vehicle as well. So please monitor your tire pressure at least 3 to 4 days once. The tire material, mostly natural or synthetic rubber is used, and mostly they are constructed in a radial way. Road roughness, again, we'll be discussing that, whether it's an asphalted road or a wet road or a dry road. Presence and absence of liquid on the road. This is very, very important. Sometimes it will be newly tarred. Sometimes it would have rained. It will have an effect on the rolling resistance force. Sometimes it would be dry. It will have an effect on the rolling resistance force. So all our frictional load forces, both internal as well as external, are referred to as the rolling resistance forces. And the tire of the vehicle, the rotating components inside the vehicle and the road surface play a major role in the rolling resistance force. And they are a function of the composite mass, the tire material, road roughness, as well as the presence and absence of liquid on the road. So here you can see the rolling direction as well as the rolling resistance. The rolling resistance is trying to oppose the rolling direction. Once again, when the tire touches the road surface, it will not be exactly circular. There will be some slight deformation due to compression and shredding. So therefore, the effective radius of the tire would be reduced. We'll be discussing in the forthcoming slides. This is an ideal case. Practically speaking, when the tire touches the road surface, there will be some compression and shearing, due to which there will be a deformation in the tire. This deformation in the tire is also due to rolling resistance, the resistance offered by the road as well as the tire. So if the tire pressure is good, the resistance is lesser, the rolling resistance is lesser. Once again, if it's a mud type road, a normal tar or asphalted type road, the presence of liquid, or if there is rain, the friction offered by the road will be less. I've already explained these things. To give you a mathematical foundation as to the rolling resistance force, we can consider a typical wheel of a vehicle which is moving on a road surface here. So as I had already told you, ideally there should not be any deformation, but practically there will be deformation in this tire due to compression and other forces, shearing forces. So the effective radius R gets reduced to RD due to the deformation in the tire. So here the P is the weight of the tire. Once again, the aerodynamic drag force is linked to the rolling resistance force also. If this tire is moving from left to right, then the aerodynamic drag forces or resistance due to wind will be more at the front side. The air molecules will hit the tire at the front side than the ones hitting at the back. Once again, due to which there will be some pressure difference created at the front side of the wheel as well as the back side of the wheel. Due to which the weight of the wheel gets shifted by A from the center to the right side. So as you all are aware, FRR is the rolling resistance force. I think this I've already explained. So opposing force, which is overcoming this weight of the wheel, will also be shifted by a distance A. And our radius will be effectively reduced due to deformation from R to RD. Now, how do we estimate this particular rolling resistance moment? Just to recollect our +1 and +2 physics, our moment of force formula is given by M equal to R into F. where R is the distance from the applied force to object and F is the applied force. So if we consider our wheel, our front wheel going from left to right in the forward direction, the rolling resistance moment of this particular wheel can be given by TR equal to P into A. Here, please observe the weight of our wheel has been shifted from center to the front side. So this can be compared with the force due to rolling resistance. Once again, rolling resistance moment is it's a turning force. So force into radius gives us the torque. So our rolling resistance moment can also be expressed as the rolling resistance force into the effective radius of the wheel considering the deformation in the tire. So if we have FRR into RD, we equate that into P into A. So finally we get the expression for the rolling resistance force FRR as P into A by RD. So that ratio A by RD is given as the coefficient of rolling resistance P into mu RR. I hope it's clear. I'll be happy if any clarification is required from the audience. Or if I'm also ready to take up some questions at the end of the PPT also. Dhruva Kumar sir, can we do it at the end or?
Yes, sir. No problem. And some questions have been posted in the chat box. I think, would you be able to?
Yeah, this time. Yes, sir. This is by Mr. Naveen Kumar. Which tire material presence will reduce the rolling resistance? Generally, Professor Naveen, tire material is generally natural and synthetic rubber only. So it is the wheel base which plays a major role rather than the tire material, because most of the vehicles, as far as my knowledge is considered, generally tire material, they make use of natural and synthetic rubber, some plastics and some sulfur is added. And 99% of our tires are radial. They are constructed radially. So most of the vehicles go with this particular tire configuration only. But wheel base plays a major role. Yes, will the presence of water on road increase the resistance? Okay, fine. I think I've already explained to you. Thank you, Professor Naveen. Any other question? I would be happy to take it now before I proceed, because I've been going on with the PPT. I'm not able to gauge whether it has been understood.
I think we'll take up in the end, sir.
Fine, sir. Then I'll proceed with the presentation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Professor Aprameya is asking another question, sir, in detail, which is dominating. Sir, we cannot judge which is dominating. Once again, which component of force is dominating? There are so many factors which play a role here. It depends on the type of vehicle which you are going, and it depends on the type of track which you are going. See, if you are going uphill or downhill, I think the aerodynamic drag force will be more dominant. If you are going uphill or downhill or on a flyover, the aerodynamic drag force, both the shape drag as well as the skin drag, skin friction, they will play a predominant role. And when the vehicle is moving on a level track, I think the rolling resistance force would be more predominant. Once again, it depends on the nature of the track. If it's a wet road, if it's a dry road, if it's a kacha road, or if it's a muddy road, in some cases there is no road at all. Our road is filled with potholes. Even a pothole filled road will have an effect on the rolling resistance. it will seriously compromise the tractive effort of the vehicle. That is why generally when you see a pothole, please try to avoid it. And while avoiding the pothole, please check who is coming in front and behind. So these are some, how tire diameter affects the coefficient of friction with road by Professor Prashant. Yes, the tire diameter, once again, if the diameter of the tire is more, then the center of gravity of that particular wheel would be shifted more. So the effective radius would be reduced. The rolling resistance force would be more prominent when the tire diameter increases, because more effort has to be delivered by the propulsion unit of the vehicle since the tire diameter is bigger. Yes, the torque required will be higher. That is what I meant. More tractive effort needs to be delivered by the propulsion unit of the vehicle when the tire diameter is small. Okay. I hope I clarified Professor Prashant's doubt. Thank you, Professor Naveen, for the support. Any other question? I'll proceed with the presentation. Maybe I'll take some more questions at the end. Dhruva sir, can I proceed with the presentation?
Yeah, please, sir. Yeah.
Sorry, again I. Yes. So therefore, the weight of the vehicle would be shifted from the center to the front portion of the wheel. So the opposing force also would be shifted by a distance known as A. Finally, I think we even discussed the expression. Fr is equal to P into A by Rd. This A by Rd is the coefficient of rolling resistance. Now this coefficient of rolling resistance varies. I will be showing you in the next slide what are the different test cases. So now we have FRR equal to P into mu RR. P is the weight of the vehicle, which is given by mg cos theta. So we have FRR given by mu RR into mg cos theta. So the rolling resistance force in Newton, rolling resistance coefficient, vehicle mass in kgm, acceleration due to gravity. So here, I think this would also help the audience. So if it's a concrete or asphalted road, our coefficient of rolling resistance is 0. For a rolled gravel road, our coefficient of rolling resistance is around 0.02. For a tar road, it's between it is around 0.025. So once again, I forgot to mention this. Wheels on rail will be different. Here, when we were talking about wheel and tire, we were talking mainly about natural and synthetic rubber tire, or the tubeless tire which is mounted on the wheel rim. But we conveniently forgot our rail as well as the wheels on the rail. So there again, the rolling resistance coefficient will be different. And the resistance offered by the running rails or the railway track will be different as compared to that of a road. In fields, we have our farmers plowing their fields using tractors. So once again, the resistance offered by the field, the rolling resistance offered by the field to the movement of the tractor is different. So tractor wheel diameter is very huge because the rolling resistance in fields is very, very high. You need to apply more pressure, more tractive effort in order to propel your vehicle. So all in all, it varies with the type of the vehicle also. By now, it must be clear. Even in different segments of the vehicle, you have sub-segments. Like for your three-wheelers, you have an auto rickshaw, you have some transportation and logistics-based vehicle. I'm not getting the name. You have two-wheelers where you have bikes, you have electric bicycles. So it once again varies with the type of the vehicle. I think this will summarize the effect of rolling resistance on the vehicle. So, as I had already explained before, this is the source is taken from Michelin. So, at least 80 to 95% of your energy is lost in the contact patch. So, bending, compression and shearing has a maximum role in deforming the tire. At the same time, you can see the effective radius of the wheel is reduced because of this bending, compression and shearing, or because of this deformation. And we also saw the aerodynamic drag force is linked to the rolling resistance forces. So the air molecules hitting at the front side of the vehicle is different from the air molecules due to the rear side of the vehicle due to the pressure difference at the front side as well as the rear side of the vehicle. We have aerodynamic drag, which is around 0 to 15%, and some slippage. Slippage has got more to do with the adhesion coefficient of the wheel. So how good is the wheel able to grip the road? That measure is given by slippage. So that is comparatively negligible, but deformation, because of the resistance offered by the road, is having maximum impact on the rolling resistance force. Another important statistics which I thought I would show everyone is the tire pressure. So please be very particular, at least henceforth. You have to keep monitoring your tire pressure. So higher the tire pressure, you can realize more speeds. The coefficient of rolling resistance also will increase. I'm sorry, coefficient of rolling resistance will decrease as the tire pressure goes on increasing. You can see you are having, in the legend, you are having the tire pressure for 5 tires from 1 to 4. So as it goes on increasing, the coefficient of rolling resistance reduces. And you are able to realize a uniform speed. So the tire pressure also plays a major role on the rolling resistance coefficient, or mu RR. I think I've tried my best to explain the concepts of aerodynamic drag and the rolling resistance force. So now we have force due to gradient, or it is more popularly referred to as hill climbing force. So by now, aerodynamic drag as well as the rolling resistance opposes the movement of the vehicle. It is very clear. So now here, this particular force, which is either called as gradient force or hill climbing force, this is more prominent when your vehicle is encountering a slope or it is climbing a hill. It is generally denoted by Fg. So when we take the horizontal component of the force due to gradient, we get Fg equal to m into g sine theta. So this force does not exist when the vehicle is moving on a flat road. So this point is very clear. This comes into picture only when your vehicle is encountering a slope, either uphill or downhill. And whether it is going uphill or downhill, once again the nature, the magnitude of this force will change. If the vehicle is going uphill, the force would be positive. So in this case, as you all are aware, our machine will be operating in 4 quadrants. So forward motoring, forward braking, reverse motoring, reverse braking. So generally when we are going uphill, the gradient force is positive. Here our machine will be operating in the motoring mode. It will be transferring power from source to load. That is from the energy source subsystem to the propulsion subsystem and subsequently to the wheels. And finally, the vehicle propels in the forward direction. Suppose the vehicle is coming downhill, then our electrical machine will work as a generator. So power is delivered back from the load to source. Again, for this, regenerative capability has to be present. Otherwise, this energy is also lost in the form of heat. If we have to recover the energy when we are coming downhill, or when we are coming downhill, we apply brakes. We generally apply brakes as well as clutch. We don't apply accelerator when we are coming downhill and if it is steep. So in that case, if we want to absorb the energy, or if we have to ensure the energy is not lost in the form of heat, then we should have regenerative capabilities in our vehicle. So now the machine will work as a generator, and the kinetic energy from the wheels is recovered and sent back to charge the battery, or it is sent back to the energy source subsystem. So therefore, regenerative brake mechanism helps you save energy, and at the same time, if you are having an onboard charger, it also helps you charge the battery. It can either be used as a reserve power source instead of wasting the energy in the form of heat. So therefore, if the vehicle is going uphill or downhill, it depends. The gradient force will also vary. So it is positive when it is going uphill and negative when it is coming down. So now, force due to linear acceleration. So if we have to accelerate the vehicle or change the vehicle speed, so we need to provide the force required for the acceleration. So this is once again dependent upon our Newton's second law, or the law of momentum. So the momentum of a vehicle in the forward direction is proportional to the net force exerted on the vehicle. So if the net force exerted on the vehicle is 0, then there will be no movement. The vehicle will be at standstill. So therefore, the force required for linear acceleration is very simple, m into a, or m dv by dt. And the force required to spin the rotating parts within the vehicle drivetrain. Once again, the difference between a drivetrain and powertrain is only with respect to the motor. Drivetrain delivers power to the driving wheels. Powertrain comprises the motor or engine plus the drivetrain. So drivetrain is purely the transmission mechanism without the motor, whereas powertrain is the transmission mechanism with the motor or the engine, in case if it's a hybrid vehicle. So if we have to spin the rotating parts, the transmission components within the vehicle drivetrain, we need to have supporting torque, or the propulsion unit must deliver torque to support the rotating parts within the vehicle drivetrain, which is known as the force due to angular acceleration. I think all of you must be aware there are different rotating equipments within a transmission system of a vehicle. You have gears, you have differential, you have axles. So main objective, once again, is here it is to overcome the moment of inertia. Once again, Newton's first law. Since there are so many rotating parts present within the vehicle, there is an associated moment of inertia, and the tractive effort must overcome this inertia of the drivetrain, which is known as the force due to angular acceleration. So therefore, from the Newton's second law of motion, we have T equal to J d omega by dt, or when we convert it, we have J by R dV by dt, or our force is given by the torque by radius. Finally, we get the expression J by R square dV by dt. I think this is simple mathematics, which most of the audience would be aware of it. So finally, let us come to the total tractive effort. we have discussed different forces which act on a vehicle. We had forces due to the aerodynamic drag, we had forces due to the rolling resistance, we had forces due to gradient or hill climbing force, which is predominant only when going uphill or downhill. Then we have forces due to linear acceleration as well as angular acceleration. So the total tractive effort delivered by the propulsion system to accelerate the vehicle in a forward direction, it must overcome all these opposing forces as well as aiding forces which act on the movement of the vehicle. So by now, I think all of us would be clear, opposing forces are the forces due to the rolling resistance, forces due to the aerodynamic drag, forces due to hill climbing or gradient. Aiding forces are forces due to linear and angular acceleration. So therefore, if we can express our total tractive effort as a cumulative sum of the rolling resistance force, the gradient force, the aerodynamic drag, the force due to linear acceleration, and the force due to angular acceleration. So both opposing as well as aiding forces are supported by the tractive effort of the vehicle. And this tractive effort is provided by the propulsion subsystem of the electric and hybrid vehicle. And if it's an electric vehicle, the propulsion subsystem is purely powered by the battery. And if it's a hybrid vehicle, our propulsion subsystem is powered by a battery as well as an internal combustion engine, which can be a petrol engine or a diesel engine. So I think the concept of tractive effort is very clear. So since the propulsion subsystem also plays a major role, so I would like to give a brief overview of the propulsion system without getting into details, because this itself is a big concept and this itself requires more time to deliberate. So the electric propulsion system is the heart of the electric vehicle, and to take it further, the electrical machine is the heart of the propulsion subsystem. So let me reiterate it again. The electric propulsion system is the heart of the EV, and the electric motor or the electric machine, speaking in general terms, is the heart of the propulsion subsystem used in EV. So our propulsion system, as I had already shown in the beginning, comprises of our power modulator, the motor drive, the transmission components, and the wheels. Sometimes the transmission components are optional because some vehicles go for manual transmission, some vehicles go for AMT or automatic transmission. For manual transmission, the gearbox, the size of the gearbox is huge. So we have the power electronics converter, which tries to control, convert, and regulate power from the energy source subsystem to the electrical machine. So once again, it comprises of many power semiconductor switches. The main purpose is to regulate power from the energy source subsystem to the load. So power converters play a major role. And when we are going for, whenever we have an electrical machine, we should have an associated speed control mechanism. Nowadays, people are very much particular about cruise control inside a car. So therefore, there needs to be an associated speed control mechanism. So we have a electronic controller. This is different from a battery management system, or it is different from a charge controller, which is placed inside the energy source subsystem. Just to make it more clear, we have the electric motor, power converter, the control mechanism for the motor, which form the core of the electric propulsion system. I think electric motor, it's an electromechanical energy conversion device. It doesn't need any explanation, which you all are aware. So when it is moving in the forward direction, it delivers power from energy source subsystem to the load. Where during braking, it captures the kinetic energy from the wheels and delivers back to the battery. So either it charges the battery or it can be used for some reserve power storage. So generally, it is better to have a regenerative braking mechanism to avoid energy losses and to increase the efficiency. So if you have an onboard charger and onboard energy storage, it is better to have a regenerative brake mechanism also, which goes hand in hand. I think power converter, I've already deliberated on that. So the electronic controller provides the gating pulses to the switches of the power modulator. Therefore, the profile of the voltage and current supplied to the motor is changed by means of these electronic controllers. And it also tries to control the speed of the motor. You can realize a motor of a very high speed bandwidth, a very smooth speed performance, dynamic as well as steady state, a good torque handling capability. All these features can be realized with our electronic controller. So major requirements of the EV motor drive. So if our propulsion system has to deliver consistent attractive effort in hostile environment, we need to take into effect some important factors. First and foremost, we must have a high instant power and power density, energy density. As I had already told in the beginning, if it is with respect to range, driving range, then we have to focus on energy. If it is with respect to acceleration, then we have to focus on the power requirements. So generally, we make use of motors which are having high torque to power capability inside our propulsion system, and motors which are comparatively smaller in size. So generally, PMSM and BLDC as well as induction motors, these are the three most popularly used machines in the propulsion subsystem of electric vehicles. Even the recent Tata Nexon electric vehicle has a permanent magnet synchronous motor, which is used in the propulsion unit. And when our vehicle is hill climbing or when it is encountering a gradient, our propulsion system must have high torque capability. At the same time, it must have high power capability if you want to realize cruising or high speeds. So your motor drive system must operate on constant torque as well as constant power regions if we have to get a very good dynamic and steady state performance. Fast torque response, very important. And high efficiency. This is where you try to use regenerative brakes. Then you can optimize the size of the motor. You can optimize the size of the battery. You can increase the energy density of the battery. You can reduce the associated losses. So in the form of heat, you can capture them. So all these things would be important when you choose a particular propulsion system for your vehicle. Reliability and robustness is very, very important. We had encountered different operating conditions: uphill, downhill, level track, different types of roads, asphalted, RCC, a mud road, different types of tires, different types of climatic conditions, very important. Nowadays, most of our electric vehicles, in fact, our Morris Garage internet vehicle comes with even climate control. Even Tata Nexon EV comes with climate control capabilities. So the climatic conditions also play a major role. So we need to choose a propulsion subsystem or a propulsion system which takes care of the operating conditions and of course reasonable cost. But if we take an electric vehicle, cost is still one major disadvantage, because I think at least 50% of the total cost of ownership of an electric and hybrid vehicle is taken by the battery itself. When I mean to say total cost of ownership of an electric vehicle, it is the sum of the total capital cost as well as the operating and maintenance cost of the vehicle. So generally, some of us consider only the capital cost of the vehicle. But if we take the total life cycle cost of the vehicle, we need to consider the operating and maintenance cost also. But there is a disadvantage here because the cost of the battery itself is close to 45 to 50% of the total cost of ownership of the electric vehicle. So probably in the future, we can expect some batteries swapping stations where in that case, you can buy vehicles without any batteries. You can go to a swapping station, get a fully charged battery installed on the vehicle, use it. After it is discharged, once again, replace it with a fully charged battery. Then you will be paying for the charging tariff. So this is still not yet come at the commercial scale, swapping stations. But maybe in the future, 15, 20 years down the line, maybe we can see them propping up all over in India. So cost is one disadvantage, at least from the battery point of view. So once again, our power semiconductor technologies, the motor technologies, they are constantly evolving. Even the control algorithms are constantly evolving. So therefore, our propulsion system growth has been totally dependent on these technologies. So DC motors are generally been prominently used. This was up to 1960 or 1970, after which from late 50s or early 60s, with the advent of power electronics, induction motor has taken over DC motor. So for the same torque and power rating, and we have induction motor which is considerably lesser in size than that of a DC motor. And DC motor requires more maintenance. So most of our electric and hybrid vehicles come with commutatorless motors, either permanent magnet synchronous motor or BLDC or induction motors. Some of the advantages being higher efficiency, power density, operating cost. Induction motor is very robust, rugged. It is rough and tough. It can be used in, it works out well in any hostile condition. And it requires less maintenance. So these are some of the developments, and I would also like to show some of the EV motors which are used in existing EV models. All these models, as of now, they are not in India, but in India for Tata Nexon, the EV motor which is used is PMSM. So I think that I have included it in, and even for our Hyundai Kona electric SUV, I think they use a permanent magnet synchronous motor. Probably at the end of the PPT, I have shared some links for additional reading. Please go through them. Particularly, I advise all the polytechnic and engineering students to go through those links to get a understanding of what is the current trend in the automotive industry. So what is the specification, and also please refer the tire specifications also, very, very important. And the wheel base, that is also important. So by now, I think the students, all of you must be clear that everything matters when you go for an electric vehicle. You just don't go by mileage or range or your the exterior design or look. You have to go into all these parameters and then make a decision as per your conscience. So this is the architecture, propulsion architecture of an electric urban bus. I think here even the energy source subsystem is shown, but when we see in our propulsion subsystem, we have battery charger. Since it's a plug-in hybrid, plug-in vehicle, so you have a charging port to connect to an external charging outlet. You have a power converter and the electric motor. These form the core of the propulsion subsystem, which are connected to the mechanically linked. Again, there is electrical connection as well as mechanical connection. The core of the propulsion subsystem, power converter, electric motor, and control system, they are the core. They are connected to each other electrically, whereas to the transmission system, they are connected mechanically. So these are some additional information. You can please go through them. The students, especially automobile and mechanical engineering students, as electric and hybrid vehicle as such is purely interdisciplinary. So if I can take 5 or 10 more minutes. So here, whichever engineering domain you belong to, you may all come from diverse engineering backgrounds, but you all have something in it to work for in electric vehicles, right? So the chemical engineers can focus on battery technology, battery chemistry, right? So come up with battery configurations which are having higher energy density, which are having more charge discharge cycles, right? The electronics engineers can focus on the battery management system, right, for condition monitoring of the battery. Of course, mechanical and electrical engineers play a major role. I don't need to elaborate. Then even the computer science and IT engineers play a major role. Nowadays, we have internet vehicles. Your Morris Garage MG Hector is an internet vehicle. So if you want to have a cloud-based mobility platform, a next generation mobility platform, I think either Tata Nexon or Hyundai Kona come with a cloud-based mobility platform where they use all these data for analytics. So everybody has a role to play in an electric and hybrid vehicle, irrespective of which engineering background you come from. Okay, so with this, I wind up my session. I hope I have done justice. In the timestamp given, I've tried to cover as much as possible, and I thank you all, especially my esteemed colleagues from other engineering colleges, my esteemed colleagues at Government Polytechnic, Harapanhalli, and all the enthusiastic engineering students from polytechnics as well as engineering colleges. I thank you all for your time and for your patience. I would be happy to get feedback from you, any suggestions for improvement, and some questions which I would try my best to address. Thank you so much. Dhruva sir.
Yes, sir, I am here. Participants, if you have any questions and feedback, kindly directly unmute yourself and ask to the resource person. In chat box also we have some questions. I think they are old questions, I think.
Yes, sir. Chat box questions, I think these questions we have already discussed.
Yes, sir. So if anybody having questions, kindly unmute yourself and you can ask.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. If nobody has any questions.
Thank you. So please refer those additional, those links which I have given for additional readings, particularly the students. Please refer them. It will be very useful. If you are thinking of a career in electric and hybrid vehicles, I think you need to be aware of the current trends. Thank you all for your good feedback.
Sir, I have one question.
Yes, sir, please.
Sir, when we use our own vehicles,
yes, sir.
So how can we apply these laws, friction laws and those things, so that mileage will be increased?
Yes, sir. Very good question. First and foremost, simplest is please keep checking your tire pressure, sir. Please keep checking your tire, monitoring your tire pressure. That has a serious effect on the fuel efficiency of the electric vehicle.
Okay.
And even the oil level, that also matters a lot. If it's a, of course, for an IC engine based vehicle, the oil level matters a lot. For an electric and hybrid vehicle, as of now, even I don't own an electric and hybrid vehicle. So for an IC engine based vehicle, we generally have to check the tire pressure, the oil level, and apart from that, we need to be clear with respect to our emissions also, tailpipe emissions of our of our IC engine based vehicles. Electric vehicle doesn't have any tailpipe emissions.
Okay, sir. Any other questions from our participants? Somebody is talking. I think we don't have any questions, sir.
Yes.
Everybody is very happy with your session.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I once again thank Professor Dhruva Kumar for coordinating this event right from the beginning. I'm grateful to him as well as the management of Government Polytechnic for giving me an opportunity. This happens to be my first Atal FDP as a resource person. So I hope I did some justice.
Yes, sir. Definitely provided a lot of justice, sir. We are very happy because the dynamics thing, it is very well known to us. Being a science faculty, we are also studied so much of things about dynamics, kinetics, and everything. So it's very easily understood by everyone. So you have made ready the things such a way that any person can understand the things. So we are very happy for that. And this FDP consists of all branch lecturers, especially from mechanical and electrical. Maximum E&C participants are available here. So I think for them, there is no need to worry about this content. So they are very well known and very well understood. And it is presented very nicely, sir. So we thought we were very happy for the session. So thank you for accepting our invitation and presenting a session here. And also I thank Manikandan sir for referring your name, and also Hanish sir also referred your name. So I am thankful to them also.
I am also thankful to both Professor Hanish and Professor Manikandan for
Yes, sir.
referring my name.
Yes, sir. With definitely in the yes, sir. Definitely in the future, we will, if you conduct on any other Atal FDPs, definitely we will come back to you for so many sessions.
Thank you.
So hopefully we'll get some more FDPs, I hope.
Thank you.
So
sir.
yes, sir. So thank you, sir. Thank you for accepting our invitation. So we will look forward for your considered support, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So I request all participants that now the session will be completed. So tomorrow our session will be started at 9:30. Kindly join back by 9:30 tomorrow, 9:30 a.m. So thank you all. Have a nice evening.
Thank you.